Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller. I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talk. Today, I want to talk about something that I think we have all dealt with, and it's a very tricky 5-letter word, and that 5-letter word is blame. And the name of this episode is There Is No I in Blame, and the reason I say that is because blame, very seldomly, is single-sided. And it's tricky, too. The idea of something being someone's quote-unquote fault or blaming people at all is a really tricky and sticky wicket and a really dangerous rabbit hole to get into. But I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, when something goes wrong, do you usually point the finger outward or inward? Because sometimes I think that we, as I've said before, are our own worst enemies. And we point the finger inward at ourselves and say, oh man, this is all my fault. I'm so sorry. We apologize unnecessarily, which I have an entire episode about unnecessary apologies if you want to go listen to that one when you're done with this one. But we do that. We point the finger inward at ourselves, or the extreme opposite happens. And when something goes wrong, we say, oh my God, this is all your fault, or this is all so-and-so's fault, or this is all the fault of this person. And the truth is, I think, that it's never, ever cut and dry. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. When something goes wrong, even though our brains sometimes want to assign a single cause to it, so often is the case that there are so many factors that contribute to something going wrong that we really kind of forget how many things had to transpire and how many things happened to make that thing happen or go wrong or go sideways. So today we're going to explore why blame is rarely one-sided, and we're going to talk about how to handle those moments when you feel like it's all your fault. And even if you're not someone who usually points the finger inward at yourself, and you're usually kind of an even-keeled person and try to see the best side of things, you have probably done it at least a handful of your times and shouldered the blame for something you didn't need to shoulder. Now, this idea came about. I had a great conversation with a very, very wonderful person who offers so much fantastic insight and perspective into my life and into things whenever I talk to them. I am so blessed to have them as a friend and a mentor and a sounding board. But the idea is that when something goes wrong in a relationship, we'll say, whether it's an intimate relationship, a friendship, a partnership, a business partnership, a business relationship, whatever it is, it could be with just a friend or a neighbor, it doesn't matter. But when there are other people involved, and specifically usually two people, when something happens, if you are entered into that, whatever it is, collectively, if it's a relationship, obviously it's a pretty easy thing to wrap your mind around, right? It's a relationship with the other person. But even if it's a coworker, even if it's someone who you are working together with all the time, or it's your business partner or your best friend, when something happens and something goes wrong, the idea is that you get through things as a team and you get through things together. You don't just say, oh, this is all my fault, woe is me, throw a pity party, and then hope that things get better in the future. You can work through them and walk through them, and the idea is that there's no good reason to ever say that something is all one person's fault when you are involved in a group or a team effort. And the person I had this conversation with, this really should be their podcast episode if they had a podcast, because I feel like I'm stealing their thunder. But the idea is really, really true. And what came out of it is a beautiful reminder to not always try to shoulder heavy things when you are involved with another person who is always right there next to you to walk and shoulder them with you. And I think a really important thing to remember, too, during this is that there is, outside of blame, there is cause and effect when things happen. Someone's actions or someone's words always cause something to happen or someone to feel a certain way. You can't take that out of the equation. Someone says something hurtful to you, the other person feels hurt and upset, and that is a cause and effect relationship. However, the goal is to look at what has happened and figure out a way to, one, walk through it, and then two, work so it doesn't happen that way in the future, whether it's being mindful about your words or finding a good solution. But there's nothing productive that comes out of someone just throwing something hurtful out there and then walking away from it like nothing ever happened. There's also not much good that comes out of that one person looking at it introspectively and saying, boy, I said something really hurtful. This is all my fault. I caused them pain. I made them feel X. I made them feel Y. This is all on me. Gosh, I'm really mad at myself or angry at myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. Now, is it good to say you're sorry when you do something wrong? Absolutely. Is it good to understand how forgiveness works and forgive yourself and other people? Yep, that's also important too. But please remember that self-blame can lead to guilt and shame and lowered self-worth. And the more you do that, the more you give into that on the psychological side, the more detriment you are going to do to yourself. Because I think we as people, we tend to oversimplify. Our brains want a villain or a single cause when something goes wrong. But that's not the case very often, if ever. And other blame creates resentment and erodes trust and overshadows problem solving. So if you blame yourself, you're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel shamed. You're going to feel like your self-worth is being lowered, and that's not good. And if you blame others, you're going to create a sense of resentment towards them because you're like, oh, well, if this is all your fault, if you didn't do this, I'd still be happy, or whatever the case may be. That will eat away at your trust, and then it's going to overshadow the overall and more important mission of actually solving the problem, because that's the goal, right? The goal is to solve the problem and walk forward in a way so it won't happen again in the future, or if it does happen, it happens in a less severe way because you have learned from your mistakes and learned about how it can be better as you walk forward in kind of a different way. So sometimes we do have a role, like I said, but rarely is it the whole story. Sometimes it's more of a cause and effect. Hey, I did this. That was the cause, and the effect was this person felt upset, or this person got offended, or this person needed clarification, or this person got mad at me, or whatever it is. But don't assign that cause and effect the overarching title of blame or fault, because sometimes that's not what it is in terms of the entire story. And I think one of the things that blame does is blame reduces, well, very often, not always, but very often blame reduces a complex situation to a single target. And that's where we get in trouble, because we think, oh, there is one single reason that this is going wrong, and we're going to find it and just assign the blame to that person or that thing and point their finger and go from there. Now, like I said, it obviously shows up in relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, workplace relationships, whatever. But the one-sided blame dynamic kind of looks like this. When one person always says, oh, it's my fault, or one person always insists that, oh, it's your fault, you are splitting up and dividing your relationship or your friendship or your business partnership at the very start of the issue instead of finding a way to work through it together. Because remember, that's the goal. Working through it and walking through it together so you can become stronger and better and tackle it together as a team is what you want to work on. You don't just want to allow that one-sided blame to shove everything to one side and ruin the overall goal of problem solving and becoming better and a stronger team or a stronger relationship or marriage or whatever it happens to be. You know, and one thing I think that can also cause is if you are always shifting the blame on yourself, if you're always saying, oh, that's all my fault, what you end up doing a lot of times, even unknowingly, is you start walking on eggshells and you have this giant imbalance where you're like, oh, gosh, now I don't want to be myself. I don't want to say what's on my mind. I don't want to be outright with my thoughts or my emotions because I don't want to offend them or upset them because I don't want something to go wrong again because, you know, that last thing that happened was all my fault. Those three really detrimental words. You know, that last problem that showed up was all my fault, and I don't want that to happen again. So I'm going to just walk on eggshells and make sure everything's always nice and happy, and I'm never actually going to say what's on my mind or what I'm feeling emotionally. Hard stop, because that's also not healthy, right? That's a really unhealthy habit to get into. Your healthy shift towards something healthier should look like this. You should focus less on who caused it, quote unquote, and more on how to move forward together. Because the cause, as soon as the thing has happened, it doesn't matter what caused it, right? And I've talked a lot about this in my episodes about decision making, and I've told stories about the fire service and problem solving and all that kind of stuff. the actual event, the thing, the one event that happened, the cause in this case, once it has happened and once the things have been set in motion and the cause has been dropped, you say, oh, this has happened, I said this, or I did this. Once that's over, you can never take it back. So the shift is to find a healthy way to move forward together and solve the problem. Because pointing a big giant arrow at what caused it in the first place won't actually solve it. It's never going to make the problem better. It's never going to help you walk through it and walk, away from it with the other person. If you just keep pointing backwards to, oh, but this happened and you did this and you said this, then where do we get? We don't get anywhere. We're always looking back to try to assign blame to someone and point the finger or the arrow at the thing that was said or the thing, quote unquote, that went wrong. And we forget that the overarching goal is to get through all this crap and get through the problem and work through it and walk through the hard things and come out better and stronger on the other side as a team or a partnership or a romantic relationship or a friendship or whatever it is. So make sure you don't lose sight of that healthy shift of where we want to get to, instead of always looking back and just assigning blame to the one thing that actually caused the event. Because once it has started in motion, you have to just use the motion to your advantage. You can't just say, I'm going to go back and point my finger and say, I'm going to undo the thing that happened. Because once it's happened, it's happened. So we know what we need to do. We know we need to focus on solving the problem and getting to the end result. But how do we do that, right? So let's talk about practical strategies to do that. One thing you can do is just pause and examine all the variables. Ask yourself, what factors were outside of my control and what was a shared responsibility? Because sometimes there are lots of things that pop up that we have absolutely no control over. We go to an event and somebody gets stuck in traffic and somebody is late because, they couldn't get there on time and they were supposed to be there at the very beginning or there to help set up or whatever it is. And you say, look, I can't control the fact that there was traffic. Could I have found another way to go? Sure. And you might, the initial blame game might show up and you might start to think, oh, well, I should have gone a different way. I should have known there was going to be traffic on the highway. I should have anticipated a problem. I should have left earlier. But in the grand scheme of things, if you did leave early and you did do your best to get yourself there, you can't control the fact that there was traffic, or you can't control the fact that there was an accident and that shut down 2 lanes of the highway for 45 minutes. Those are things that are out of your control, and they're also out of the normal things you can anticipate when you make a plan to get somewhere. And this isn't just about going somewhere and getting somewhere. Sometimes, no matter what the situation, sometimes there are things that show up that are outside of our control. The weather. You plan this great event, it's outside and it pours rain. Could you do anything about the weather? No. Could you have watched the weather forecast? Yes, you could have. And maybe you did, and maybe you planned for it because they said it was going to be a sunny day. And it wasn't a sunny day. It ended up with a freak pop-up thunderstorm that happened, and it ruined the whole event. And you say, oh, that's my fault. I should have known it was going to rain. I should have watched the weather better. That's our natural mindset. But you didn't do anything grossly negligent and outside of your control to say, or inside of your control to say, oh, I could have made a better plan. Sometimes things just are out of our control. But when you do that, when you think about that, a practical thing and a better thing to do is, hey, listen, let's look at the variables here and then talk about them. These were the things that are shared responsibility between me and my other person, me and my spouse, me and my partner, me and my friend, me and my business associate, whoever. And then these are the things we can share responsibility for that went wrong. And then also, these are the things that are out of our control. And list them out so you realize what you're working with and what you're dealing with, and don't just always think that it's one single thing that went wrong, right? We said before, usually it's a whole boatload of things. And also, shift your language too. I kind of hinted at the beginning of the episode, using the word blame and using the word it's my fault that's detrimental. Assigning blame and using the phrase it's my fault can be kind of tough to work through. So you can say things like, here's my part, or here's what I want to own in this situation, and that opens a lot more doors for a productive conversation than the automatic, oh, it's my fault, because then the other person kind of might think, well, okay, you're assigning blame to yourself, one, that I didn't assign to you, but also, whose fault would it be that you were late? It's certainly not my fault. Sometimes I think it leads to a challenging conversation rather than an open one. And when you do this, seek clarity too when you do that. When you say, hey, here's what I can own, also ask the other person or other people for their perspective instead of assuming you know what they're thinking or what they're feeling. Maybe they don't feel anything at all like you think they feel. Maybe you're so worried that they're going to be furious and they're like, oh, it's okay. It's no big deal. Like, we handled it. It's all good. And you blow it out of proportion in your own mind, and in reality, they're thinking like it's perfectly okay. Like, we're good. We're going to get through it. Don't worry about it. So ask for that clarity. Don't assume you know what other people are thinking. And listen, when it comes to boundaries too, if you are working with someone or if you are involved in a group of people and you have someone who is consistently offloading all of the blame onto you instead of self-blame, recognize it as a pattern and protect yourself. So we've been talking about how a lot of times we blame ourselves, and using that language of, oh, it's my fault is counterproductive from our own perspective. Also, be really wary of the fact and really cognizant to remember that sometimes other people will always want to just point the finger at someone else and always try to shift the blame onto someone else. And if that person is you and they are constantly offloading all the blame on you, recognize and realize it's a pattern and protect yourself. And this happened to me in a big way in the past. There was someone that nothing that ever went wrong was ever their fault. It was always my fault. I became the scapegoat, and I said, enough is enough. I'm not showing up anymore for you to always pass the blame onto me and to push it off onto me. Like, you've got to take some responsibility for it. And if it takes me walking away or just ending this altogether, that's what I'm going to do. And sometimes you have to, because you have to protect yourself. So protect yourself from yourself with the whole, oh, it's my fault, I'm to blame kind of mentality where that's detrimental. But also protect yourself from anybody else in your circle or in your relationship or your friendship or your organization who always wants to shove off the responsibility and put the blame on you because they don't think they ever did anything wrong, right? That's a problem. And look, you don't have to take all of the weight. And you don't have to push it all away either. Balance is really key here. When something difficult shows up, walk through it with the people closest to you. Walk through it with your friend, your partner, your business partner, the people in your group. Split up the weight and carry it together and use that balance to your advantage to make it easier to walk through. Because if you are feeling all the weight or all the blame and the other person doesn't know that, and there is not a lot of clarity, they might be thinking, okay, we're working through the situation. Meanwhile, you're over there drowning because you feel like you're never going to do anything right ever again. And that's not what the other person's thinking at all, right? So don't forget to balance things. Life is a lot about balance, no matter what situation we're walking through, right? So just remember, as a reminder, blame is rarely one-sided. Okay, it's not one-dimensional either. It's not just a cut and dry single line like, hey, this is what happened and here's to blame. It's not usually ever that easy or ever that simple. So I want you to reflect on your own patterns. Do you lean towards self-blame or do you lean towards outward blame? Which one is more likely for you to do? Which one resonates more with you? Do you think, oh man, I'm listening to Todd talk about this, and all of a sudden I realize that I really do always say it's my fault. I really do always take the blame. I apologize unnecessarily. I'm the one who's always trying to be a people pleaser. I walk on eggshells because I don't want to offend anybody going forward. Or are you the person who says, oh, nope, not my fault. Nope, wasn't me. Nope, that other person's fault. It was all them. Or are you somewhere in the middle, right? And being in the middle, I think, is the healthy place to be, where we realize that blame is not one-sided. It's a complex thing when something goes wrong. And listen, when things go right, usually I think it's more cut and dry, right? Here was the goal. We set out to do it, and everything went right. Awesome. And it's not that simple. But it sounds that simple on the surface because there are not unknown variables or factors that popped up to make people unhappy or angry or feel like they're having a bad day. And they can just keep rolling along with it because what they wanted to happen happened and they had a good day. So remember that too. It's so multidimensional when things happen. And when something goes wrong, all of a sudden we start nitpicking it apart and saying, oh, well, this went wrong and you did this and you did this and I did this and I did this. But remember to balance things, okay? Own your part of it for sure. Understand that there is responsibility to be had on both sides, but also seek some clarity. Ask the other person what they're feeling and what they're thinking, and never, ever assume you know. And also walk through it together because, like I said, once the thing happens, once it's been set in motion, you can't go and undo the thing that happened, right? Once it's over, or once it's started, it has started, and you can only work through it once the motion has happened. You know, you can't really stop the motion of something. I mean, you can, figuratively, if you're talking about something, you can just clam up and not want to talk about it at all, but that's even worse. That's even worse still. So don't do that either. But you can't put the genie back in the bottle, so just work with what you've got and go forward and work with what's in front of you with the people you have to rely on to get through the difficult thing. So here's my challenge to you. This week, when something goes wrong, or I should say if something goes wrong, but maybe I should say when something goes wrong, because it seems like something always pops up with the crazy lives that we lead sometimes. But so this week, if something doesn't go as planned, instead of asking, well, whose fault is this? Ask, what part did I play? What part did the other people play? What parts were out of our control, like things like the weather or traffic or an accident on your way to work or on the highway? And then that shift alone can change the entire dynamic, because once you start doing that and you start acknowledging all the different parts and pieces of things that go wrong, you can really start to understand that it's not one-sided and it's not either all your fault or quote-unquote all the other person's fault, right? So that shift is really important. So do that today if something goes wrong. All right, my friends. I feel like this episode's been a little heavy for some of us because we are people who blame ourselves a lot, but also maybe, hopefully, it's helped your shoulders lift a little and feel a little lighter because you've gained some strategy and some insight. And, oh, you know what? I do that, but going forward, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to be better about it, all right? And always, no matter what it is, whether it's blame, whether it's your eating habits, your working habits, your workout habits, your relationship habits, I don't care what it is, never be afraid to reflect on your own patterns. Look at the things you do and see the patterns within them. And when they start to take shape, if they're a good pattern, keep after it. But if it's a pattern you want to change and not something that you think is all that great, don't be afraid to change it. Because that's really, really beautiful to do that for yourself. To say, hey, these are things that are helping me be the person I want to be. I'm going to walk into these and keep after those and keep doing those. And also, hey, these are things that don't make me feel great and I really think I should get away from them, so I'm going to stop doing them as best I can. Do that, okay? Because remember, I want you to remember you are steering your own ship. You get to point it where you want to go and work towards where you want to be. And remember, there is no I in blame, and there also is no single story either. Lots of complex things happen. Lots of dynamic things happen when we deal with other people and ourselves. That's one of the beautiful things about being human. All right, my friends, please remember to subscribe, share, like, download, all the things for the podcast. Push all my buttons, as they say on social media. If you think this would resonate with a friend of yours, please go ahead and share it with them. A huge thank you to the friend I mentioned in this episode who is always there to listen and talk and rebound ideas and help me walk through difficult things and difficult ideas and even just big fun ideas as well. And also have a fantastic rest of your day. I hope you have appreciated and enjoyed the message. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.